Hi, I'm Nigel, an engineer with over 30 years experience. Join me on my adventures as I build new, repair old and restore beauty. This is Bleeding Rust. Hello, welcome back to the workshop. Something a bit different today. If you're anything like me, you'll absolutely love watching restoration videos. I certainly do. And some of the channels I follow, in fact, I'll put a link to my favourite in the descriptions video, My Mechanic. The way he films them is absolutely amazing. I'm not going to get anywhere near that in this episode, but I need to cut my teeth and do a restoration video because I've not done one before. I've got a big restoration coming up that will be on the channel, something very unique and quite sentimental to me, and I want to make sure I get that right. So we're going to have a practice and we're going to have a play by restoring something that I've been given by one of my subscribers. So one of the subscribers, Paul, and you know who you are, Paul, salvaged this because it was being thrown away where he works and asked me if I could use it. And I certainly can. It's this. It's a bench guillotine or a bench cropper. Various different names for them. It's the same thing. It's in remarkably good condition, albeit it's been left for a while and it's got quite a bit of rust. It grinds a bit when you're cutting. You can hear that creaking noise. That's the spring here rubbing against its guide. I think it should freewheel that guide. We'll have a look at that when we dismantle it. So what I thought was, we'll get this pulled apart and split down. We'll have a look at the fixings on it and does it need new ones. These blades, both the bottom and the top blade, both want a good clean and make sure that they've got good edges on them. And make sure that everything's working as it should do. And this will be a very welcome addition to the workshop. So, okay, so this is it. It's made by Atlas. I'll show you the original label there. So it's a BS200. Means nothing to me, if I'm being honest with you, but maybe you've got similar or you've used similar in the past. It says on the plate there, the maximum plate thickness that it will cut is 6mm steel. Now that is quite a claim. Now whether you could actually cut 6mm steel, I don't know, but I've got some 3mm plate. I'd be surprised if it could cut 6mm plate, being such a small guillotine, but that's what it says on the label. You can also cut bar with this. Now, if I just move this guide out of the way, if you stay, you see there's a hole there. Now, if I operate the guillotine, you'll see that it actually cuts. Now, that's a secondary cutting motion, and that's for cutting round bar. Whether I'd use that, maybe some small pittings, if you were doing a lot of them, it'd be useful. But I'd probably just use my angle grinder. But looking at it around, you can see that it is quite rusty. This is that pin there, if I can get it to focus properly, that is making the noise when you can hear it creaking. That should, and it's springing. So we need to do something about that. It does look original. I'm not sure if all of these pins are original, but the way that they've used lock nuts and consistently does look original to me. Also looking at those threads, they're very coarse threads, so I have a funny feeling that they're not metric, they're imperial. And there's the bottom blade, as you can see there. All looks original to me, but again, a lot of surface rust on it. And then the upper blade, as you can see, that's also got a lot of surface rust. You can see where I've given it a quick go, and it's rubbing the rust off. So it is pretty consistent though. And from looking at it, I think the blade does follow. It's not bent, which would affect the way it cuts. You can see that it's looking pretty straight. Now, I also thought that this guide here was bent because it does look a very odd shape. But I don't think it is, because if you look at that profile there, you can see that that's straight. Then it comes out, and then it goes back in again, and it actually sits nice and flush and level that way. But also, if you look at it that way, it's running parallel to the blade. Now, if that was bent and it wasn't supposed to be like that, I very much doubt that those two would line up. This is basically so that when you go to cut something, now forgive me for putting my fingers in here, but I am safe. If you was to cut something and as this top blade came down, what if it's blunt or you're cutting something pretty heavy, it'll try and bend it like that and not cut straight. So this guide here is meant to hold the steel on this side, so that doesn't happen, or to help prevent that, so that you get a nice clean cut. So we'll be taking that off when we remove the spring. It's a pretty beefy spring. Okay, so what level of restoration do I want to go to on this? Because a few squirts of oil and I'm sure that this would work perfectly well. But that's how this has been treated already. And look how it's going rusty and it's just been left. I think it deserves a little bit more love and affection than that. But at the same time, I'm not planning on going to the same level as the restoration channel that I've put a link to in the description, My Mechanics, because he would go to the extent of cleaning this down, stripping all the paint down, and then using filler paste to make this perfectly smooth. And then when he repaints the painted parts, they actually look better than the original. That's a lot of work. This is a practical tool for me, but I want it to last. It's a cracking piece of kit, and I'm ecstatic that it's been donated. So I want to show it some love, get it back to its fully working order as it should be, and just make it look a bit tidier. Let's get it split down into its component parts and have a look what we're dealing with. Okay, first of all, let's get this spring off. More grips on the end. Just keep hold of it, keep it safe. Oh yeah, it's not as strong as I thought it was. Now that's loose, that could drop down nice and easily, so that's good. I think the next step will be to take this bolt off, let the blade drop down, and then we can remove the actual handle off it. I think we'll remove the actual handle itself first, then it's not in danger of dropping down and catching anything. So this one first. Now it looks like an M8 from here, however, if it was an M8, this would be a 13mm spanner, and it's not, it's bigger. So that further makes me wonder if this is Imperial. So I'm going to use my adjustable spanner because I don't have Imperial spanners. That's quite loose. Well, I'm very pleased that these are not all well rusted in. That looks in good condition, look at that. It's quite a coarse thread, and I don't think that's Loctite. I think that, because it matches the colour of the paint on the handle. Oh, that came off very easily. Yeah, you can see inside the handle there has got paint, same colour. So I don't think it was Loctited, and it certainly didn't come undone like it was Loctited. So that's the handle off. That makes everything a little bit safer. So next, for this, that's the locking nut off. Very, very coarse thread on these. And a spring washer. Let's take that out. Oh, and look how worn that is. So there on top, that's very worn. It's also got very thin, and that's where the actual spring sits in that and guides along. So it might be worth remaking this. As you can see, because it's threaded all the way down, those threads have worn. And that's one of the main hinging points for the actual handle. So I think we're going to have to remake that. But now, that's now separated the blade from the handle. Now we have this section. So we take this off, take the handle off, and we'll get a bit closer to where we want to be. 3/4 spanner. And do that. None of these are over tight. and remove, other than that one pin, in pretty good condition. And there's the pin. Now that's also in very good condition. I'm glad, because I wouldn't want to have to make a new one of those. That was only finger tight. Spring looks in good condition. It doesn't look like it's been bent out of shape. So yeah, looking good so far. This is that plate that's the guide. And again, if you look, I think it is meant to be in that shape. It looks odd, and it looks like it's been, it looks like it's bent, but it isn't. That is how it's supposed to look, I'm pretty sure. So next, let's remove these two pins here. Those lock up first. That's come undone nicely. And the main nut, which has a spring washer. They look all right. You can see where it's been rubbing, but I can rub my finger there and I can't feel any wear. They look in good condition. So a bit of a clean up and I think they will be absolutely fine. Now to remove the blade itself. And that means that this pin, there's a nut on the back to undo. And it's not very tight. I think I've been very, very lucky with these so far, that none of these, now do this without, that's quite tight in there, here it comes. Again, same as the, on the hinge part at the front, it's got this stepped pin with a thread on, so these will be going back on. And again, they're not over tight either. Nothing on this has been over tight, and certainly none of the bolts have been rusted in, so it's all very positive. Looks in good condition. Another one there with a spring washer. Is it stuck to the... Oh, there we go. So again, this is the bottom blade. Look at that. There's no chips on it at all. Obviously, you can see that it's tapered. That's the actual shearing edge there. It's like very much, these just basically work like a giant pair of scissors. There's a few, I can just feel some very minor chips along the cutting edge. But that's to be expected. A little bit of honing on that and it'll be as good as new. Not much in the way of grease. So I'm surprised it's in as good a condition as it is, to be fair. But yeah, so these need cleaning up. So that's the two blades off. And what we're left with is the main body. So that's our component parts. We've got the main body. We've got the two blades, the cutting blades, the upper and the lower. We've got the actual hinge mechanism for the handle. There's the actual handle. That's the part that takes the handle, and the hinge part, and the two bars that transfer their force from the handle into the top blade. We've got the spring. We've got our two stepped pins. And then we've got the nuts and bolts, and finally we've got the side guide. That makes up the whole thing. So there's not a lot to it. There's a lot, obviously, to be cleaned up. And I think we'll start by cleaning up the main body itself. So I'm going to start off with some degreaser. This is just engine degreaser, because there's a fair bit of deposits of old grease and oil on it, especially around here. Just to clean it off with degreaser first and some paper towel, and then we'll have a look at maybe using something potentially a little bit more aggressive to clean it down, and maybe I'm going to remove these labels. I've took photographs of them. We'll remove the labels, and I may just paint this and the handle with some primer and some spray paint, just to tidy it up, because I think it just deserves a little TLC. And then we'll look at the other parts. So we'll start off with some degreaser. Yeah, most of these corners are refusing to clean up as just quite so easily. Yeah, despite wiping majority of the dirt away, it is still looking pretty sorry. So I think, to repaint this. So we'll look at getting rid of these rust spots, cleaning it up. I'm going to have to sand it down and give it a really good clean and prep it for a new coat of paint, I think. So I'm going to start off with P120 first. Clean that up. Get rid of the remains of that sticker, label. 120 grit's working really well. I'm not sure if you can see that. It looks chipped around that edge. This is where this looks like it was a single piece and it's been bent and made into the shape of the piece. And that looks like cut marks from either probably oxyacetylene cutting when it was originally made. And that's what they look like to me. It just looks a bit rough around there. And I think when it's painted, it's going to show through. So I'm going to get rid of that with a round file. So here was me saying I'm not going to go to the extent that my mechanics does, and already I'm filing off edges that annoy me. I did say I wasn't going to go to the extent of using a file on the edges, but I think I'm just getting into the swing of it. And this restoration stuff is a lot of fun, but I get the feeling that it's the sort of thing that can take over your life. This is very therapeutic, I have to say. And I did say I weren't going to go to this extent, but yeah, I can see why channels like they do go to the extent, and what you might think they're going over the top, but they're not, because I think they've just caught the bug and they've started filing edges, and then when you do one edge and you think, well, that looks better and that's less sharp, and you move on to the next bit, because as you clean one bit it makes the other bit look worse and you end up gold plating the whole thing. So I've got to get practical with this to the level of how far do I go. So I think we're almost there with this. Little few more tickles here and there just to make me feel better, but it's looking and feeling a lot better. A lot of the chips have gone. So yeah, a little bit of finishing off and we'll be all right. I've gone as far as I'm going to go with that. You can get really carried away. It's so easy to get into it. And yeah, as I think I was mentioning in the video, it's very easy to get carried away. I'm happy with that now. I've sanded it down as far as I think we should take it. I've wiped it off with some acetone, so that's ready for priming and painting later on. What I want to look at now is restoring those cutting blades. Okay, so This is the top cutting blade. This is the one that moves. I'm quite happy. I'm not feeling any... There's a slight burr on it which will hone in, but I want to clean it up first. I'm going to use this medium grade Scotch-Brite and see how that works. I've no idea the best way to clean this, if I'm being perfectly honest. There's so many different ways, but I don't want to be rough with it, so I'm just going to... That's coming up quite nicely, actually. We'll use this. It's medium Scotch-Brite. And I've got a very fine Scotch-Brite as well, which might try and get a bit of a polish on it. And that's working really well. See if I can zoom in here. Right, you can see there. I mean, this is really zoomed in, so they probably look worse than they actually are. But there is one there that definitely needs taking out. The rest of the blade looks pretty good. There's a couple of there, and there's one bad one. So obviously, I think someone's tried to cut something a bit over the thickness of what it should be. So I'm going to get some sandpaper now and just see if I can sand those lumps out and at the top. But I don't think it's really going to affect the effectiveness of the blade. I certainly want it better than it is. Those burrs. Well, that feels pretty good, actually. Let's get down the sand. Okay, so it's smooth now. I'll take you off so you can get closer and have a look. These are the dimples. That's the worst one. But if I zoom out so you can just get a feel of actually how big they are, that's my finger on it there. I'll zoom in based on my finger. You can see these actually really tiny. Now you can see, again, it's got the marks left over from the manufacturing process, and I think they're quite ugly. So I'm just going to polish them out with the grinder. I've got a fairly worn, so a flat pad on my grinder, and as you can see, it's pretty worn down. It's almost to the end of its life, that flat pad, so it won't be too aggressive. I'm just going to gently polish away the cutting marks from the original manufacturing process. So I'm just putting a coat of undercoat on. I'm using zinc phosphate undercoat primer. Doing that now so that it's got overnight to dry, because when I come back in the morning, I want to put the top coat on so that that can all be drying while I finish off the rest of the parts. It's day 2 and this has dried really nicely. Looks really smooth. It's looking good. That's the handle. So I want to get some top coat on these so that can be drying while I finish the other parts. The colour I've gone for is this, that's the lid off it to show you the colour. It's this green colour, meadow green I think it was called. Looks nice. I think it'll go well with this part. It was like a pale green, if you remember. There's nothing left now that was that colour. It was like a pale green. But we've gone for this. I couldn't get anywhere near the original colour. But I'm happy with that. I think it'll look good. The paint's gone on really well. It's difficult to see in this light, but it looks great. So, having cleaned up the bottom blade, maybe not surprisingly, you can see there's damage to that blade. So what I thought I might do last night was get my TIG welder, just there, and just fill those in and polish them back down again. Now that's not perfect because I'll be filling it with stainless steel filler wire. I've got mild steel, but the stainless steel filler wire is just slightly harder. But either way, it's not hardened metal. I also need to make sure that I'm very quick with it, that I'm not putting too much heat into the blade that then ends up annealing the blade and then losing the hardness of the blade, because this blade is hardened steel. So I'm in two minds, but I think it's bugging me that that damage in the blade is there, because it's otherwise perfect. Okay, I'm all set up for welding these two notches that are in the blade and to try and repair those. But I'm going to have it quite low amps because I don't want to put too much heat into this blade. Now it's quite a big blade, so it will soak up the heat. Okay, so I've put a good dab of filler material on them two notches, and that's filled them up. I can now polish them down and those notches will be gone. But before I do that, and while the welder's still set up and running, let's get the bottom blade done, because that's got corresponding notches on that as well. That is much better. That big, horrible, ugly notch is gone. There's still a slight tiny bit there, but I didn't fill that. The ones I filled were here and here. But yeah, there's a slight bit on that. But again, I don't want to do too much and risk softening the blade. But I'm really happy with that. I'm much happier than I was last night. You know, I'm not saying I had a sleepless night or anything, but it was playing on my mind. So the next thing that I want to tackle is this bolt. Now this is one of the hinge bolts from the handle mechanism that down through the connector rods onto the blade, and it's got this piece on it which is the carrier for the spring. Now as you can see, this bolt is really badly worn there. Now I think that this has been turned from the head of a normal bolt. That's what it looks like. So when you put the two together and you was to turn off the edges that form the bolt, it ends up at the same diameter. So I think that's just been turned from the head of a bolt. So that's what I'm going to do, because I don't have any other options really. So this is going to be an interrupted cut, because as it goes round, each of these edges is going to be hitting the bit and taking a cut. And then it'll be striking it. So I'm gonna have to take it a bit by bit, and it's gonna be noisy. It's gonna, the noise of it hitting. But once I get past that, it should be pretty clean. So what I wanna do is turn that down until it's a round piece to match the original, and then we'll look at putting a groove in the middle. Okay, so that's nice and round now. I'm going to put a chamfer on each end so it's not sharp, and then we need to put a groove in the middle. Needs to be a little bit deeper and make it a little bit wider. So let's do a little bit more. Much better. Well, I'm quite surprised by this. I mean, just by wire brushing it, it's come up really well. There's maybe a bit of discoloration there, just that bit. But everywhere else, it's come up really good, as if, well, I don't know, it's quite, some bits of rubbish in there, clean out. Yeah, so I think, I'm not going to paint that, because I think the paint will just flake off. I think I'm just going to oil it. So what I'm doing now is hot bluing. So you warm the bits up, the parts up that you want bluing, to between 300 and 400 degrees. So nowhere close to melting point or even getting cherry red. And then you dump them in oil. Lovely black colours come back. And that's treated out. All it does is it helps to protect it from rusting. So I'll get the rest of these done now, and then we'll almost be ready for reassembly. Ooh, that oil's quite warm. Well, I hope the wife's not planning on doing any cooking with olive oil tonight, because she's going to be out of luck and I'm going to be in trouble. So I think it's chippy tea tonight. Okay, so we're just going to dry these off, take the excess oil off, and that'll be our fixings ready to go. So a quick recap on where we are. We cleaned and sanded down the main body, then we undercoated and painted that in this lovely green. Same with the handle mechanism and the handle itself. I cleaned and painted black the guide and the link arms. We polished the blades, the top one and the bottom one. We used a TIG welder to get rid of them horrible lumps that were them dents in it from, well, obviously cutting something too hard or too thick. So we removed those by filling those in and dents in with the TIG welder and some stainless wire and polishing that out. They're looking fabulous now. The spring I just wire brushed, if you remember, and that's just got to coat that with a little bit of oil before we put it back on. We made the new pin for that. I've just using an old bolt and using the lathe. I've since blued that, heat treated it the same as the rest of the bolts. The step pins I cleaned in the lathe and I've sprayed the ends of those, and I heat treated and dunked in oil to re-blue all the nuts and bolts, the originals, and they're looking absolutely fabulous now. So we're ready to reassemble. So we're going to start off with the bottom blade. Just make sure we get it the right way around. Put that on. Just tighten those up. So that's our bottom blade. Now we need our top blade on. So we need one of our step pins, and we need to make sure that the blade is the right way round as well. So I can see that that's the cutting edge. It actually tapers away from the cutting edge, a bit like a knife blade does. But I can see that this is the cutting edge because that's the edge that we welded and polished off. So make sure that's the right way round. I'm going to start off with some grease on this pin to make sure that it's nicely lubricated. And as well as the pin itself, the other part of the step, because that's going to be inside the blade, and it's got to hinge nicely. So that's the grease on. So pop that into the blade. And that, my hands are dirty. Getting some of these painted parts dirty because my hands are dirty. That slots in there. We'll just turn that round. So now on this side, I'll leave that there. We need a washer and a spring washer. And a nut. And then that wants tightening down. Now I can't remember whether this was fully tight or, well, that's still hinging, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yep, lovely. So that's our blade back on. So what I'm going to do now is drop the blade down. Okay, so the next step is the handle assembly. So we need the next step pin. Again, just put some grease on that. Try not to get it all over my hands. And that then goes in here. So I'm just going to gently let that sit down there. So this now needs a washer, a spring washer, and a nut. That's moving nicely. Okay, now it's the special bolt that we made for the spring. That goes there. And our drop bars, so I want the other drop bar. Okay, so I got standard nuts. I did have a a nylock nut, that won't work. So put a standard nut on and a locking nut. We'll tighten them up when we're ready. Now there's a bolt to go through there, which is this one here. Then it had a spring washer and a nut and a locking nut. Apologise that you can't see every nut being threaded on. Okay, so now we need our spring on, because that's what keeps that up. So we've got spring washer, then the plate. I'm just trying to stop for my dirty hands all over it. So then the plate, then the spring, which goes on that way, along with the tube, and that screws the whole mechanism, then screws into there. So with the guide plate on, the spring should still be free moving, which it is. So now I need my mole grips to reattach that spring to our new spring holder. Get my mole grips onto there, put that tension on. So that's in, yep. And there you go. She's all back together. And the action is really nice. The spring works well. There's no creaking and grinding. In fact, it makes no noise at all. Look at that, it's so smooth. So if you do check out My Mechanic, my favourite guy for doing restorations, and his restorations are out of this world. And this is not a patch on it at all. But if you do check it out, he always does a before and after at the end, and then tests it to show it working. So that's what we're going to do next. Well, I've got a well-earned brew after that. I'm really pleased how this turned out. Not to the extent of My Mechanics. Do check him out. The link to his videos is in the description below. He goes the extra mile. They're absolutely fabulous videos. But I'm really pleased with the way this has turned out. It's great. Thank you again to Paul for donating it to the channel. It is very much appreciated, and this will get well used. Haven't decided where it's going to live yet. If you watched my first video, I talked about building a new bench along the left-hand side of my workshop. So I've got a funny feeling it'll probably live on that bench and be bolted down nice and sturdy so that it can be used. But that's it for this episode. Loads more projects coming up, including a solar arch for Ben at Pro Marine. I've got to make a gooseneck for another subscriber, John, who wants one making out of stainless steel for the gooseneck that connects the boom to his mast. So I've got that coming up, as well as more work for Sailing Melody. And I'm hoping soon to make a visit to Ship Happens. I met those guys at Andy and Melissa's wedding a couple of weeks back. And they've invited me to go down and see their boat. Hopefully there'll be a project comes off that. I'd love to do something for their boat. But Simon's a great engineer himself. But stay tuned, who knows? So until next time, take care, and I'll see you back in the workshop.